Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Got Value podcast. I'm super excited. I have one of my good friends and mentors. He don't know it yet. At least I've never told him. But I consider him a very valued mentor in my life. And so having you on the podcast today is so dope for me because you're truly one of the kindest and smartest men who I have ever gotten an opportunity to get to know. So how are you?
Good. I'm definitely happy to be here. It's really the other way around. I've learned more from you, but we won't argue that at this time. But definitely appreciative of you thinking highly and putting me on this.
Absolutely. So for every person who ever comes onto the podcast, I always tell them I absolutely love to hear the stories, the titles, the leader journeys of just some of the dopest folks. So I want you to introduce us to who you are. I know who you are, but I want you to introduce us to who you are.
Okay, well that's cool. My name's Egwu Nwankpah. I am first, I guess, a husband and father, and a son to my parents and to my in-laws. I think that's probably where I start. I am definitely a supplier diversity expert at this point. I guess I could say that.
Yeah, definitely expert.
I'm a CPA also, so I have that financial background. And then my MBA, that strategy lens is what I stay on. But I would describe myself as a connector, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I'm a connector, and I enjoy the relationships I have in the community, and building on those and helping people not only find their way, but to find other parties willing to transact with them.
I love that. And you just said something, I think, without even noticing it. You said you help folks find their way. That for me is one of the kindest things that anyone could ever do, just simply because nobody truly has it all figured out, especially not in the beginning. In the beginning, we're all literally trying to figure it out. So how has what you needed help to frame how you've built and advanced your career? Because you truly have been helping people find their way for I don't know how many years now, over 10 at least.
Yeah, I think, everybody is trying to find that thing, some people find it early. I know some people who knew who they wanted to be in elementary school and they became that person and they're happy with that person, right? There's some people who on their deathbed are just figuring it out, but sometimes everyone else is somewhere in between there. And I think when I think about my career, obviously start off as a CPA, I used to get feedback all the time where my mentors would tell me that, analytically you have it. You have the ability to do all these things, but personality-wise, is this the right arena for you, right? You seem to have great relationships. You seem to be able to do more than spreadsheets, financial statements, in taxes and audits and all that other stuff. And that was something that I valued as feedback early in my career, that helped me find where my passions were. And that's where I think led me to where I am today.
Wow. So that too is something that I always found really, really interesting when you have managers or supervisors who actually care and can say, hey, you might be misaligned here. Yes, you may be good at this, so it's your zone of excellence because you can run numbers, you can run laps around numbers.
Yeah.
But for who you are energetically, who you are personality wise, there might be a better fit. Right. And so when you have to have those types of conversations, or as a leader, what is that like when you are having those types of conversations? Do you find it that that's something that's been easy for you to do, to have, and also to accept? Because what's the next move after that? Once someone tells you, hey, yes, you're good at this, but I don't think this is where you should be.
I think it's a hard conversation both ways. You know, in our community, the hardest conversation is, and I got this from Charlemagne, but it's true, is telling one of your friends they can't rap, right? You know, you don't have a future in hip hop, right? We all have that friend or friends, you know, and why it's a hard conversation is because you realize how much time and effort has gone into them not achieving. You understand?
Yeah.
And when someone tells you you're good at your job, but you probably should consider something else, sometimes that's not easy information because of the investment of time, right? The investment of time is what I think most people always think to when people give them that feedback, right? Whether even if people are doing badly in their job, you know, and hate their job. I've seen people not want to quit their job because they have a job. You get what I'm saying? So moving towards your passion, moving towards a thing that you should do is often inhibited by the fact that you have invested time into something and you don't want to move forward. So you have to always move very carefully when you're giving people that sort of advice and having that conversation. And I hope that you have a relationship with those people, and it's not viewed as out of left field, right? So that's really been where I have excelled, is with people that I had really close relationships, that maybe all the time didn't tell me not to do what I'm doing, but would say, wow, you can do X and Y. You can do more than this, or you're not making enough money. You should be, you know, with what you have, you should be doing X and Y. And I think that's really that fruitful advice that you can give and you can take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so crazy because it's a lot of times, and I am a firm believer, you know, we all are solutions to somebody's problem. Like somebody is the solution to a problem either that I have or, you know, a whole bunch of us have. And then when you look at like being a solution, you've held roles that literally have been drivers for other folks. Like it has been what has transformed folks' businesses and transformed their lives and also transformed their careers. But what has been a driver for you to do that kind of work? Because supplier diversity is not always easy, because not everyone, you know, not every organization, they say they have it and they say they want it, but there is no true support behind it. So what has been a driver for you to ensure that in the roles that you've held, like, no, you're making sure, no, we're making progress. This is what we're doing, how we're doing. What has that been?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's not how good your plan is can you sell it, right? Right. So I think when you think about being a solution, people typically want your mind, your body, or your soul, right? It comes down to that, where they either want your mind for the way you think, they want your body because you can deliver something physically, or they want your soul because they just want to take everything out of you and leave you with nothing, right? So I think when you look at the landscape of kind of what someone's problem is, right? There's always a problem out there, right? There's always a problem. There's not always a solution, right? So sometimes people grasp for what the closest thing to that solution is. For instance, diversity in general is a problem. Some industries, you're talking about 1% will be diverse. And I'm not talking about 1% being black either. 1% being anybody but white men. Okay. And they realize it's a problem because they have hit a saturation point in their business where they, I can't, I'm not able to have double digit returns or movement. And one of the things that I'm beginning to notice with that is that has caused people to look for people who are close enough or to reimagine what they're looking for, right? So I don't think I've been a solution completely to anybody, but I think that, you know, people have wanted different aspects of me and they've got it.
Yeah. It's kind of like understanding. And for me, I consider solutions as, our skills. I consider solutions as, the value that we bring to the table. And I'm a firm believer in that we all have value. It's a hard stop. It's just figuring out where do we place that value, and how do we ensure that when we've placed it, that we've placed it in an arena or in a way that it's not just beneficial to someone else, but there's also some benefit to us first.
Yeah, I think value is in the eyes of the perceptor, right? Who's looking at it, right? Or who's requesting it. Because when you think of it about it right now, when I was in high school, me being 6'4", 6'5" was something of great value to me, right? You might not value it. You might be like, I don't want to be around tall people because I'm not that tall, or some people might be intimidated by it, right? So different things have different value in different arenas, and really being able to provide value is going in there, seeing what they need, and becoming that need, right? And oftentimes, I think most people hire on potential. I think most people contract on potential and credibility, right? But what you have to do is go in and show, improve, and do at that point.
I love that. Most people contract potential and credibility. Your job is to go in, show, improve.
And that's where that value comes from, right? Where it's now like, oh, I see the value in what they bring. That's why some people like me and you have these conversations all the time about clients. And sometimes, some clients want to pay $40,000 for you to come in for a few weeks and get them right. Some clients will say, I only have 20, right? Same service. And someone values it more, double than the other person, right? Yeah. And that's based on your credibility, right? What you've done in the past and what that's proven, and then potential on what you can do for them, right? So you have to go in and either prove that 20 or 40,000 is either a discount and they got lucky that you came that cheap, or that, maybe it wasn't worth the money, but it's all up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a thing too. Like when you go in and you're looking to show and prove, I'm a firm believer, like nobody knows everything, right? There's always something, that we still need to learn, grow in, all the things. Yeah. So when you do, when you are ready to, okay, all right, we going in, we're about to go in and do the thing. What does it look like too to still increase your level of knowledge while you're in there? Like, what does that look like? How do you tap into, as an employer, as a team member, or even as an executive, tap into like L&D to ensure that you're still like fortifying yourself when it comes to what how you're doing things. Like, what does that piece look like?
Everything has gotten easier. Knowledge is much more attainable now. We have this thing called the internet where I can, on my LinkedIn feed, I see all sorts of interesting stuff that I normally would have had to really look deep to find. When's the last time you went to a library and looked on a microfiche and did all that other stuff? Correct. It's probably been decades, right? Because everything is at our fingertips. It's even on your phone. Forget about the computer. Right. Yeah. and it used to be really hard to get information. It used to be really hard for you to stay up with things. It used to be really hard for you to have a conversation with somebody that's big. It used to be really hard to get in touch with people. All that stuff has gone away. So I think even though it's gone away, the difficulty, I think it's still something that you have to have their own gumption and your own feelings and your own itching to do, right? I don't think if you have that if you don't have that itch for knowledge, I think you won't go. I mean, I think it's very easy to be entertained by other things also, right? With the other end of all this information is constant entertainment. You could stay on TikTok and watch it for hours and the day go by, right? Just flipping through, right? Or you could go on the internet and look up Harvard Business Review and read it, right? With that same time. So I think your ability to, move forward, and your ability to gain more knowledge, your ability to get better is kind of on you now.
Yes. And also too, there was not a debate, but there was a thread on Twitter the other day that I was reading where people were saying, oh, their jobs weren't supportive of their growth and all these things. And my question has always and will always be, who did you communicate the type of growth that you wanted? Who did you communicate it to? Like, what did you say to, whether it was a mentor, a supervisor, or whomever? Hey, this is the role, or this is the area in which I want to go. How far am I away? You see, this is where I'm at. What do I need to learn and know? And taking that onus onto yourself, it really does empower you to get what you want.
Sure.
Like, it empowers you to get what you want. So how do you teach others to, to honor themselves, but also to communicate their needs when they're looking to excel professionally? Because you can't just expect people to know.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I think communication in general is difficult, right? There's different levels to communication. We all know, right? So I'll take advantage. If my wife wants a night off because she's been dealing with our 2-year-old all day for weeks at a time, and my 5-year-old and my 9-year-old all, she wants a night off. I have to be intuitive enough to say that, you know what, she's saying she needs to go out for a salad or something. And that means I need a night off, right? You don't have that much time or relationship power in the business world, right? You need to be upfront with, I need a day off, right? Because people aren't going to intuitively necessarily care. Not to say people are cold, but I don't think people intuitively have the time to really understand how you're feeling and the code for I need to get off, right? So I think the communication is key in order for your wants and things to happen. You'd be surprised at how many people are not promoted in organizations because they have never expressed that they want to do anything more than they're doing. They think I'm going to go in, I'm going to be early, I'm going to do a good job, and it's going to push me up the ladder. But people are like, oh, they seem happy where they're at. They've never mentioned it to me. When I ask them what else they like to do, they say they love their job. So they leave them at that level. They don't move up, and they find themselves stuck and ask why. So I think communication is very important for everybody, to make sure that everyone is on one accord and everyone is singing the same tune.
Yeah, I really like that, because one of the things that I have started to ensure that I don't do is to tell people of color to work harder when they're in an organization. Because I feel like that does a major disservice, because it's not that you're unwilling to work hard, it's just you don't know that in addition to working hard and getting your job done, you also need to build strategic alliances and relationships to people that you have, just like you said, communicated that this is where I desire to go. This is the level of growth that I want to achieve or experience in my career. What do I need to ensure that I get there? Like, our skills, I call them value, our intrinsic skills, they're honed and developed. But if you don't make an actual effort to do so, and then to communicate what your needs are as to why you are looking to develop said skills, gifts, and talents, then you're going to always be left wanting, or honestly even pissed off, because you haven't done your part. It's kind of like boiling the egg but never cracking it. So you don't get the goodness of the egg because you did part one, but you didn't finish, you didn't close the loop. You gotta close the loop.
Yeah, I think in general, I'll say this, and I don't like making generalizations, but I'll say this. Black people, we are often not exposed to all the alternatives or information, right? So we are working harder and don't have the keys always to work smarter because we don't know. We haven't been exposed. We're resourceful people. Our community, listen, there's people who come to me. I've been in commercial real estate officially for the last 7-8 months. There's already people who have come to me and say, you know what, there's this young man, I want you to meet with him. He's considering going into commercial real estate. There's no one around to speak to him. And I'm connecting him with this person and that person, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, I didn't know that person. I wouldn't know who to talk to about commercial real estate. You know, I wouldn't have known who, I didn't know anybody. There's nobody I grew up that was in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. There's no one I knew that understood commercial real estate, because I'm sure there are people in the service portion of commercial real estate. Whether it's, you know, I knew a lot of janitors growing up, because they made money, right? Consistent money. They always had a job. I knew a lot of people who had businesses that, you know, HVAC and things like that, who serviced those buildings. But I didn't know anybody who was a broker, who was making millions of dollars. Thank you. Or tenant, a lead, you know, something in there that would be able to explain the process. So I say we don't have the exposure all the time that puts us in a position where it's like, all right, these are your options for a career and things like that. So oftentimes what we do know is we need to work hard. We need to be there early. We need to do this. We need to do our X and Y. We need to get these degrees, these certifications. And justifiably so, we're upset when we get what our counterparts get and we don't move as far as them. It's because we don't have that exposure to know the actual steps that you need a lot of times to make it in these industries.
Yeah, it's like the math ain't mathing. Like, I did all the things that you said I was supposed to do. I did step one, you know, get out of high school, do really well, go to college, graduate summa, magna cum laude. Like, I did all the things. I got a great job. I'm in the job. I'm showing up. I'm turning in my work. I'm doing all the things. And the teacher doesn't give me the gold star. And it's like, wait, this 1 + 1 is not equaling 2. It's equaling 0.005.
That's right.
I don't understand.
Right. And that's where I come in, right? Yes. I'm that connection. I love to connect people. Everyone who knows me will say I love to put people in lights and give them the opportunity to get in front of a room that maybe they couldn't get in front of before. I love it when it's, you know, an opening and I connect somebody with a position, or I love it when someone's business gets a 7-figure contract and it's because of a connection I made. I love that. And I think that has propelled me to put that love on steroids and make a career out of it.
Ooh, I love that. Love on steroids. And you've made a career out of it. So then, do you believe that is your why, or what do you believe is your why? And then has it changed? Like, as you have changed, has it changed?
Yeah, my family is my why. I mean, come down to it. I mean, really, everything else is a means for those things, for them to eat, for them to go to kung fu, soccer, tennis lessons, swimming lessons, school, private school, have a car at their disposal, and live in a nice neighborhood where I feel they're safe, safer than what I felt growing up, right? So I think all those things are my why. The way I get to my why is I find you always do your best business where you like what you're doing, you know, and where you like what you're doing. So I think, you know, one thing that, and I think most companies are going through this today, right? Where there's this big, like, oh, you're going to do that? You're going to say, come back when? Okay. Here's my resignation. And they're like, where's your job? What new job are you going? No new job. I'm just tired of it. 2 years, for the last 2 years, I've been afraid to go to the grocery store. I've been cleaning my groceries off. I've been wearing a mask everywhere for 2 years, and I have a different outlook on life, right? So when this happens now, everyone is like going towards their passion, right? So everybody now has to be nicer.
You gotta be human.
You gotta be human. You got to make sure people are getting paid a living wage. The other day, I tell this story all the time. My oldest daughter loves Burger King. If I give her the option of going to the Cheesecake Factory or Burger King, she's going to Burger King. And you know how much I love the Cheesecake Factory. And we went to Burger King. We were on our way to Maryland. I stopped in the Burger King, get food, drove up to the drive-thru rather, and the lady said, "Can you come inside? I'm by myself. We don't have enough people working." Okay, and why is that? Because all years, it's two things. Number one, and I won't go too far because I don't want this be political. There's been years of beating down on the immigration population. Who, I'm a child of immigrants. When our parents come to America, my parents came in the '60s. My dad was a student, but he was a janitor at night. Mm-hmm. So I always have had empathy and a good feeling. The janitors are always my guys. I adapt them, and I'm always happy to see them because I understand coming to this country and finding work. You understand?
That's why we vibe. Because that was my second business. I cleaned rich people's houses. I was 14 and I started a business cleaning people's houses.
Okay, yeah, and that's good money. So
it is,
and I like to be clean. So there you go. but I feel like a lot of ways that people were using as stepping stones into careers and things like that, all of a sudden they were vilified. They're hiding and stuff like that. Now you go to Burger King and they're saying, "Come inside. The line's long, and I don't have anybody else to help me work." I think part of that is this pay. You paying people $8 an hour for years, and they've been struggling just to make it to work, and their trip home at night costs half as much as their shift. And so that's changed things. So I think having that empathy for people, who are really working hard, and businesses now having that investment in people where they're saying, we need to make sure people are taken care of and they're part of us and we're actually a family again, which I think what business was like many, many years ago. It's a new shift.
Mm-hmm. It's an awakening. And it's heartbreaking that it took something so detrimental. Mm-hmm. But if you keep ignoring, the slight ting, eventually you'll have to respond to the blaring alarm.
Sure. Yeah.
Ignore the bell. Okay. Yeah. Eventually that bell is going to turn into an alarm that you cannot ignore. You can't ignore it because you're going to lose an eardrum if you do.
And we like stuff here, we like stuff. We'll go Black Friday shopping broke. That's just how we do in America. We live off excess and we live off what we want. And, one of the things that you were talking about needs and wants earlier a little bit is, one of the things that we all want is to be able to get what we want when we want it, right? Mm-hmm. And, there's something in between that's called service. And those are people who we have to hold in higher regard in society. It's the Amazon guy who's delivering things. It's the food delivery people who were risking their lives in COVID. Their importance came up and it was shown to be very important at a very hard time. So it's time for us to reinstate how we value things in this country a little bit.
Absolutely. And what it did is it highlighted kind of what all of our personal mission should be, which is to be kind, to understand that we really are all, we're all humans. I don't care whether you're the richest human or the poorest human, or you have all the accolades or you're just getting started. We all are humans. And there's just a certain basic level of respect, of care, of just bare minimum humanity that we all should be tapping into, because we are all interconnected. And if it's one thing that the panorama taught us all, is that. And so for what it did for me, forcing me to sit down and think about, what works for me? What do I want my life to look like? I always like to ask the question, like, if you had to sum up like your personal life's mission in one sentence, what would that be? And then how has it continued to inform the phenomenal work that you do?
Yeah, I think if I one of my favorite writers, even though he's way more conservative than I apply to, is David Brooks, who writes for I think he's still writing for the Times, the Wall Street Journal, one of the two. And David Brooks said something very poignant many years ago. He said you could tell who's going to be what if you walk into any kindergarten classroom, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, there's a kid over there who will only play with Legos. He's an engineer. He said, there's a kid over there who's painting with his fingers and making something, and that's one of the more artistic. And then there's that one kid who knows what everyone does and can tell you who does things best. He can tell you their name and he can tell you everything. And he said, that's your executive. Right? And because he said they are not only aware of what they can do, but aware, and I'm paraphrasing what he wrote, but they can tell you what other people can do, right? And in my life, if I look back, a lot of the things, being friends with people of all different kinds, especially in public school, you can find, obviously you can find who you live with in your neighborhood. But there's also, kids who came from different lifestyles and walks than me. And, they were just as close as people who had gone shoulder to shoulder to war with me when things were going a little rough. And I think that ability has transcended me into always trying to connect all the areas of my life to still trying to connect the areas of my life. So when I have that question about certain things, I call you, I ask you. Mm-hmm. It's been weird because I haven't seen you physically in like 2 years because of this whole thing.
Such a long time.
People don't realize that's a long time for me not to see you. Even in our thing with you flying all over the world like you were, you still would make time.
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to do that. And but still, that same need to make sure that you are connected to the right people. You have the information that you might not have otherwise than me giving it to you is important to me.
Yeah. I love that, especially because I feel like you embody your mission as a connector. Like you don't, and it's something that you do so effortlessly. And you may realize it, but sometimes I watch in awe, and it literally is kind of like, I guess a chessboard. And I've never played chess, but I've seen people play chess, and just the level of strategy that they have to think, 3 or 4 moves ahead, like, no, this will be good for this, so let me keep this piece on the board, let me move this piece around, let me not do this, but that. Like, and it's never done in malice, it's always done from a servant's heart. And that for me, is what I admire most, just simply because, purpose isn't something that is linear. It's not something that, like we were talking earlier, saying, some people know exactly what and who they want to be from the beginning, from the onset. They're clear. While others of us, myself included, it took us a little fumbling around, a little figuring it out. And so for you, what do you think your journey was, or what did it look like for you as you were discovering your purpose? And then how do you suggest others even kind of like begin to figure that out?
Yeah. I probably would equate it to a jigsaw puzzle, that you have all the pieces out on the floor, and it's not until it's almost done that you understand what that picture looks like. And that's kind of been my journey, where, I had all the pieces. I had all the things that I needed to solve the problems. I got there sometimes fast and sometimes slow. But as I went along and I put the pieces together, I started to see exactly what that purpose was. So I think if I look at my career and things like that, it's been one thing preparing me for another, and that thing preparing me for another. There's times where I felt like I couldn't take certain situations anymore, and those situations dragged on, right? But you wake up one day and you're in a place where, and I always tell people this, when you feel like I don't want to get up on Monday morning and go to this place, right? That's your time. So that's when you know it's time to leave. And when you do wake up in that place where you can't wait to get there Monday morning, you're in a very good place.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Like, because it forces you to pay attention to you. And so again, it puts that onus back on you. Like, hey, you get to decide the feeling that you want to embody. Figure out, what am I doing when I'm feeling that, when I am excited about what I'm doing? And then work to figure out, what does it also look like for this to consistently, be either the work that I'm doing or, the collaborations that, I'm exercising or working in or working on. This is so good. And I thank you so much for this time with me. And I just had two more topics that I wanted to tap into.
Go ahead. I got you.
But how have you, because there's some real, like, at least there have been for me, frustrations and honestly mental exhaustion that comes when you are in a process of growing, of discovering your purpose, of figuring out how you feel about things. So, like, how have you handled, like, that frustration that comes with growth? Because I feel like not enough of us talk about the fact that growth hurts. Growing teeth, like, you have 3 girls, growing teeth is a traumatic experience for all parties involved.
Yeah. There's a lack of sleep, at least for everybody. Yeah, I think when you so there's 2 things. I think it's not just growth that hurts. I think life hurts, because it's, you and I are testament to it. Nothing goes according to plan, right? If everything went according to plan, everyone would be where they wanted to be decades, years before they get there. And I won't say growth hurts as much as just life hurts. It's, COVID. Look at COVID. My goodness, everyone had big plans. The whole thing was, 2020 vision, think clear. Everyone had the same mantra that this was going to be their year.
Best year ever.
Best year ever, right?
So much.
And not because 2019 was so bad. We can't wait for 2020 to be so much better and grow and do all this other stuff. But I will say that people grew probably the most they're ever going to grow in such a short period during that time. We were, community-wise, we were dealing with tragedy. I know people who died. So it's not like, I know people who lost parents. I know people who lost both parents. I know people who lost children. So it's a lot of loss to deal with in a short time, right? However, I know a lot of people who are 10 times more tech savvy than they ever were in their life. I know people who have started new businesses dealing with stuff like this. I know people who have made more money in this time period than they've ever made in their life. I know people who have got a new skill. I know people who have rekindled with people who they have been on the outs with. I know people who have found love, right? I think all those are growth, right? And not all hurt, but what it took to get there hurt, what it took to, I haven't seen you in 2 years. I haven't lifted you up, when I gave you a hug and lifted you off the ground in 2 years, right? I haven't seen my in-laws in 2 years. They haven't seen their grandchildren, who one of them wasn't even one when they saw them last, right? So all these things, life hurts. We missed out on life. We lost, some of us lost jobs. It hurts. But on the other end, and like I tell people, everything you want in life is on the other side of hard, right? If you want something and it's great and it's good, something you have to go through something hard to get. And that's just the way it is because life hurts.
I think it's coming to that realization and not allowing the fact that things aren't going to always be perfect. Things won't always go according to your plan. On the contrary, usually, just don't make a plan. Just decide what you want and just start going for it. Because
because it's going to change.
Your plan may not work.
Yeah.
And it shifts. I think it's coming to that understanding and not being bogged down by the fact that you can't control the things that happen to you, but the quote is true, and it is super cliche, but it is absolutely true. You do get to control how you will respond. Because in the midst of so much loss, you can also find what is the most valuable thing to hold on to.
Sure.
Like you get to define how you're going to see it, even if and when it's hard.
Yeah. And you get to, fortunately or unfortunately, you're the captain of your own ship. So, and that ship will go through hard waters, So, believing in a higher power is always helpful, and that's really what has guided more people through those storms. But I think, to think that you can go through life without those storms is naive also.
Yeah. Like, I feel like you want to ensure, and that's sometimes a bit of a contingency, or not a contingency, but a point of contention for me, in that thinking as though things will always be perfect and always be great, it's not wise, because then you don't know how to cope when things are not.
Right.
And so and it brings me to one of my last questions is in organizations, because there are going to be a number of different types of folks who are listening to the podcast, and I was going to make sure I can leave them with a gem or something that they can use, like, okay, well, I can implement this today, or I can at least start, implementing this today. But you have been a change maker for years. Definitely since I met you, you have been just deciding, okay, this doesn't work, or this can be done better, and this, like, executing and implementing on what that change looks like. But how do you do so when you're not yet in a position of power? Like, how do you bring light to issues that may negatively impact the business or those who work in and for the business? Like, how do you bring those to light in a way that not only are they listened to, but there's some action that's put behind them to mobilize the type of change that's needed?
Yeah, I think technology has really uprooted the traditional sense of your ability to not influence change, right? I think when I look at social media, I guess in LinkedIn I have a good following, and it's every so often I'll see someone when we're in person, and they're like, "Man, the stuff you posted last Tuesday really made me think," and I'm like, I don't even remember what I posted. You understand? So your ability to influence people is going so far beyond what your fear of influence used to be when everything was not there, that I say take it to the media that will support you in your goals and dreams. I don't always suggest people do it, but I remember when the Locks had their issue with Diddy, and they were, protesting and stuff like that. And at the time, I didn't understand it, because, I wasn't even here. And, when you don't live in New York yet, you don't get New York. You don't get
New York is different.
New York is different. New York is a different place. And, it's an annoyance for people to be picketing outside on the sidewalk every day for a year.
Because there's no space. There's no room.
There's no space. You have to deal with that every time you go for coffee, every time you go to your car, every time you go for anything, you have to deal with that. And that's their way of doing it. I'm not saying that that's the right way, but my point in doing that was they used the best media they could at the time, because social media and all this stuff wasn't big enough to do it. They didn't have the court of social media like we have now. Now we have so many tools. You could start a podcast. You could everyone have a podcast. I have two. You could start a podcast. You could just go and post things that make you look expert in a field, right? Go find things, accumulate data, and put it together and post it. One person will follow you, 10 people will follow you, 15 people, and after a while, you have a whole crowd of people listening to what you have to say. Right. And we've seen the negative of that, right? With all the false information and stuff happen. Yeah. But it shows you the power of how much one voice is. So instead of looking at it now that, you know what, because I haven't arrived at X, I probably don't have power. Think about it alternatively. Saying, you know what? Because I haven't arrived there, because people don't know me, because there's not as much for me to lose, I have more power. Because people are listening to a voice that should know something, but they just don't know what. And while you have the voice of credibility, I have the voice of curiosity, right? And that's just as powerful in this world.
Listen, this conversation was so good. I always love talking to you, because just the way you put things together, synthesize and think of things, it brings my little heart so much joy. But I wanna thank you so much for joining me. Where can we stay connected? Follow you on LinkedIn and all the things, because you do a lot. So where can we?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always there. You can find my name. It's there. I have a podcast on LinkedIn that is periodic, because it's called The Fire in 15, and you'll see it. It's I have on influencers, celebrities, and executives. So as you can, with my schedule traveling and their schedule, you can see that we have periodic episodes. We don't put a time on it because of that. But okay. You can find me there. We'll definitely look to LinkedIn is the right place to find.
I love it. Well, thank you. I'll make sure too that we link your LinkedIn in our show notes. But again, thank you so much, Egwu, for just being who you are. I cannot wait until this episode comes out, because I already know folks are gonna listen and be like, "That's the one. That's it right there."
And I don't know about that, but it's good to see you. I take any opportunity I can to be across screens with you. Yes. And I'm looking forward to this whole thing pulling up, so we can go and have our lunch, our power lunches. Our executive lunches.
Lunches.
They see a few hours blocked off on my calendar. They don't know why. It's our executive lunches.
Exactly. It's work. Don't worry. We're working.
That's right. We definitely working for sure.
Exactly. Well, until next time, again, thank y'all for joining us on the Got Value podcast, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Got Value podcast. Remember, there is true value in purpose, and the greatest discovery of your life will be exactly what yours is. Stay connected with us at GotValueNation.com.